Well, good morning and welcome to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom, and we are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on historic Marcus Street. And we have an exciting show because it's fan favorite. Former Congressman Joe Sempolinski will be joining us in the 7 o'clock hour. Obviously, we have a lot to talk about with him, not just on the local races because he is the chairman of the Steuben County Republicans, but also at national level, like our normal conversations. But if you have any questions for Joe, please feel free to get them in ahead of time. Happy Halloween, by the way. Quick question for those of you watching on Spectrum, if you could give me a quick text letting me know everything is okay, just looking at my monitor. I know we're going on over the air, but we had some difficulties yesterday. Just double checking, because if we were on Spectrum, I would love to rebroadcast that interview with Stacey Romeo. She's running for New York State Supreme Court judge in the 7th Judicial District, and she came from the Rochester area, and I want to make sure that we get an opportunity to have the full audience be able to check out that interview before Election Day. So if you could just give me a heads up if you're watching on Spectrum, and if there is an issue, you can't hear this. Okay, we've got a lot to talk about. Yes, the brilliant move of former President Trump taking some questions from a MAGA garbage truck. We're going to talk quite a bit about that comment still. Also a few things about what people are saying and reacting, and how they're reacting, I should say. Also, we're going to talk about the campaigns. I mean, we are 5 days away from Election Day. Again, I posed a question. Are you early voting? If you did, how'd it go? I've talked to a lot of people about it. So many people have come up to me or called or text or whatever the case may be and said, oh, it was a great system. I know someone had commented that they should have free parking at the library for it, and I understand someone had told me yesterday that that is now the case, which is interesting. They must have heard from you, the people. Also, I will be early voting today, so I'm looking forward to it. I always have a little sense of thrill and excitement before heading into the voting booth, so it feels off being that it's not Election Day, but also feels right. So we're gonna ask Joe Sempolinski about the push for early voting. But okay, just as an update, there's been this back and forth, and I don't know at the end of the day what it means necessarily, but Donald Trump was on Joe Rogan's show. Joe Rogan, I think that program got about 38 million views right out of the gate. So there is a lot of, I guess you could say, power there. So what's interesting, Harris was in negotiations with him, and then it fell through. And he had tweeted out something to the extent that, they wanted him to travel to her and that they only wanted to do an hour, and he just didn't think it was best for the show. Well, because of that, he was called a diva. And I don't know, does anybody know if J.D. Vance's interview is up yet? I know that J.D. Vance was going to do an interview with Joe Rogan. But anyway, Joe Rogan weighed in on the whole kerfuffle about not having Harris on the program. He said she had an opportunity to come. You could look at this and you can say, oh, you're being a diva. But she had an opportunity to come here when she was in Texas. And I literally gave them an open invitation. I said, anytime. I said, if she's done at 10, we'll come here at 10. I go, I'll do it at 9 in the morning. I'll do it at 10 p.m. I'll do it at midnight if she's still up. She wants to, drink a Red Bull. She actually reached out when she found out that Trump was coming on. So their camp reached out to me. So I said, great, I would love to talk to her. But it was very difficult to tie it down. They wanted to travel, and see, the thing is, if I go somewhere, then there's going to be other people in the room. And they want to control a lot of things, I'm sure. My whole goal with him, is just talk. Just sit and have a conversation like a human being. You find out things about people. You get a sense of them, at least a real sense. That was it. I don't, we'll say, care what we talk about. I don't. I just want to talk to you. Who are you? But they wondered if Harris's camp was kind of weary of being on Rogan's show. Harris, we saw that interview with Fox News, and I think that's what Joe Rogan, not to put words in his mouth, but I think that's what he's referring to, where there'll be other people in the room controlling things. If you look at that with Bret Baier, having to cut the interview short, starting late and then cutting short and then waving their arms saying it's over type thing. And he said, I don't know. I mean, just because of my appearance, there's always been this assumption that I'm some right-wing MAGA guy. I was a Bernie supporter, you know. I'm a politically homeless person for sure. You know, I'm always considered myself a left-wing person. I never thought I would ever vote right-wing. But then the tides of culture shifted in a bizarre way, and it just made me, over time, much more aware of what this stuff is really all about. The only solution to bad speech is better speech. We've always known that. But they had the power over social media and these collective groups of people that all had the same ideology. And then the tribal mentality kicks in, and you lose the perspective that you should have an educated person that recognizes that everyone has to be able to talk, and we have to figure out who's right and who might be wrong. You might be wrong, and you might be clinging to the idea that you're right, and you're going to do the whole thing a terrible disservice. That was just a quick update, but as I mentioned, it looks as if, I would think by now, the interview with Kamala Harris and Joe Rogan not going to happen. Again, I'm not a regular Joe Rogan viewer, but something like 38 million people watched that interview, so you've got to take it somewhat seriously. All right. Oh, thank you for all the comments. Hearing me loud and clear. Thanks, Ken. Appreciate that. Everything's good here this morning. Love watching you. Hey, thank you. I appreciate that. And thank you for reaching out so I'm aware, because you're not going to want to miss. And again, I know some people that watched over Antenna saw that interview. It's a very good interview, so I hope that you will watch it again, the rerun of it. But for those of you that it's new, I think it's very important to play. It's Stacey Romeo running for New York State Supreme Court. So she'll be joining us right before Joe Sempolinski comes in. I'll rebroadcast that interview right around 6:45, okay? So that's just a quick update, a little programming update, because we're running out of time with all our guests. Tomorrow we have two guests on the program, Matt Bazzetti, who's running for Chemung County Family Court, and that's in the 6 o'clock hour. And then the 7 o'clock hour, we'll be talking to Matt McCarthy, who's running, he's currently acting as, but now is running for Steuben County Court Judge and Steuben County Family Court Judge. And then on Monday, our friend Bobby Ann Cox will join us to talk about Proposition 1. So as of right now, 58,390,685 people have mailed in or did early in-person voting. So basically 58 million, soon to get surpassed to 59. Pretty remarkable. I didn't know how well the pushes for the early voting were going to go. And I don't know, and again, this will be a question for Joe Sempolinski, I don't know if what's the word I'm looking for? Not accurate. I don't know if they're reporting on the numbers of it, more Republicans, more Democrats, what the case may be. But nonetheless, 58.3 million have voted in early voting. Now, what did you think, especially if you weren't able to catch us yesterday, what did you think about the comment from Joe Biden calling Trump supporters garbage? There is an amazing piece, and I would go through it, but I'm not sure it would work for television. It's a piece by Samuel Chamberlain at the New York Post, and it's up there now, and it's a step-by-step look at how the White House and the media sprung into action after Biden's garbage comment towards Trump supporters, how they sprung the action to work as one, essentially. And it goes through the whole timeline of from the moment he said it, it was about 7:21 when the Politico tried to spin it, and it goes through various news outlets. And again, I just don't think it would relate on the screen, but I would highly recommend it because it shows you just another example of how the media is working in tandem with the White House and with, more specifically, the Harris-Walz campaign, because they saw the trouble this would cause. They were riding the wave of the Madison Square Garden rally that they've mislabeled and obviously said horrible, horrific things about. I mean, as we mentioned yesterday, a viewer had said, not only did Biden call Trump supporters garbage, before that they were calling Trump supporters Nazis and fascists for attending the Madison Square Garden rally. So really the garbage comment should come as no surprise. But they've been trying to spin it because they know it's politically damaging, very politically damaging to Harris. So much so that even CNN has a piece out today talking about how many Democrats are privately frustrated with Biden, wanting to keep Biden completely out of the limelight in any way, shape, or form. yes, this was not. Listen, I don't think this is the be all and end all. The comment, meaning political wise, I think it's very insulting. But I do think what bothers them in the media the most was it took away from the message that I think they were going to try to push until Election Day, which was a Madison Square Garden rally about how that was a Nazi rally, that this comedian that opened up, and again, we can all have the conversation about whether that was a good idea. I think, well, not think, Trump even said yesterday, no, he shouldn't have been there. I don't even know who he is. Not the best idea to have an insult comic at an event a week out. Many people saying this has been his sense of humor forever. This is not new. This is not catered towards the MAGA rally. It was his set. It was his normal stand-up routine. But they wanted to focus on that. They wanted to focus on the words of a comedian that spoke 6 hours before Trump went on the stage, opened the whole thing, and they wanted to essentially pin that on Trump. Trump probably wasn't even in the building at that point. But again, when you look at the video of what Biden said, that will be played at the end of the day less than that. I shouldn't say relatively unknown. I don't know who he is. That doesn't mean he's not well known. But that comedian has been played nonstop since Sunday. And really, they talk about most of the time. They talk about what Biden had to say rather than show the video. And they've made excuses. The White House has put an apostrophe. They're trying to suggest that no, they were talking. He was talking about this one person. It's pretty crystal clear. Even Caitlin Collins from CNN, who is no fan of Trump and who obviously wants to see Harris win, if you just look at her mannerisms during interviews, even she had to admit that it's hard to spin this when you can see the video. So we're going to talk about it. What did you think of Donald Trump getting in that garbage truck and really, for lack of a better word, capitalizing in a political sense on that comment from Biden? So we'll talk about that. Again, thank you for all the comments letting me know that we are back on Spectrum. I appreciate that. And as I said, Stacey Romeo coming up a little bit later on, and in the 7 o'clock hour, former Congressman Joe Sempolinski. So stay with us. We will be right back. Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Call or contact, either way, Boss Security for all your business and home security needs. That's our view on Halloween morn. Is that how you would say that? Welcome back as we broadcast live from the Frankly Speaking Studios, also known, more importantly, as the Hesselson Studio. Sorry, I got distracted because this one, I have to say, shocked me, Ken. I think you went above and beyond on this one. Watching Kamala Harris's speech in Washington, wow, you're giving it your all at this point. Okay, let's see what Ken had to say. Once again, my masochistic tendencies forced me to painfully watch the caterwauling at the ellipse by the world's worst candidate and the only candidate that has ever been installed to run for the most powerful position in the world without a single person voting for her, Kamala Harris. It was 100% from a teleprompter. She told us about her middle-class childhood. At what point, well, I guess in politics they say if you repeat something over and over, and even though it gets to the point of annoyance, that means it's finally sticking with people. I don't know if I necessarily buy that, because that one almost went from being, make people know that I'm from a middle-class family, to the point of almost a caricature or almost satire. She uses it so frequently with questions and in her speeches, but I'll continue. She recanted her talking points, but mostly told lies about Trump, which included Project 2025, a national abortion ban, eliminating IVF, the army will be set against the American people, dictator from day one, eliminating the Constitution, eliminate Obamacare, hates women, hates immigrants, working to divide the country and turn people against each other, orchestrated an insurrection where 5 Capitol Police were killed, Charlottesville, good people on both sides, raising taxes on the middle class, tax breaks for the wealthy, will be a tyrant in the White House. He will prosecute his political opponents, cut Social Security, cut Medicare, and I should stop recanting her lies since you only have a 2-hour show. Yeah, I mean, that's the old talking points, isn't it, Ken? That does not surprise me. That you almost wrote the speech. But after all the lies, she talked about how she loves America and is a candidate that is for all Americans. The legacy media said they expected 52,000 people, most camera shots showed much less, but there was one shot that was taken from the back of the crowd that looked like it was generated by AI to give the illusion that there was a massive crowd on the site. I'm not sure. Listen, I was not surprised that she was going to get a big crowd in Washington. I mean, those are the people that stand to gain the most from her presidency, keeping things the status quo, keeping, to use Donald Trump's phrase, the swamp, right? To keep them in charge. So I know her campaign put out 75,000. It wouldn't have surprised me either. I mean, it's Washington. But anyway, I'll continue. The shame is that the low information sheeple believe what they hear from Harris and the legacy media. Yes, working as one. By the way, if anyone sees my wife, please let her know that there's only a week left before the election, and I promise to dial back the political stuff after the election results, which unfortunately could take another month. Well, yes, many truths are said in jest, Ken, it could take a month, unfortunately. But also, I'm starting to see your wife's point of view on this one. Watching the ellipse speech, my goodness. Watching the Washington speech from Kamala Harris. Well, thank you for setting that in, though. You've got to think. We got runners to go by. You got to make a quick wave here. You've got to think how disappointed Harris and her people were that one sentence from Joe Biden, and Chris Cillizza said this from CNN, formerly from CNN, said this, not me, that line from Biden completely overshadowed that whole speech, which was supposed to be her speech, her one last pitch. And they keep saying that, but then there's more speeches from everybody. You ever know that? I guess the last pitch is the week or something, but that was her last kind of attempt to let the American people know who she is. And I do find it interesting, to your point, Ken, about all the lies and, he's going to be a dictator, he's going to be fascist, blah, blah. And then they talk about unifying. They talk about they're going to be the unifying candidate. Even though, look, Biden said what was said, and they can try to distance themselves, but at the end of the day, that's their feelings. Is that a unifying message? Is disparaging half the population a unifying message? They're still trying to defend her. Harris distances herself from Biden's garbage comment. I guess she did. She said she disagreed. But they said, and this is coming from CNN, that Democrats are privately exasperated by the president. Harris told reporters that she strongly disagrees with criticizing people based on who they vote for. Asked if she had spoken to the president about his comments, Harris said that Biden called her Tuesday evening, but the president's comments didn't come up. Wow, that didn't come up. There wasn't a, hey, could you not try to give a political victory to my opponent with a little less than a week to go? Listen, I think, first of all, he clarified his comments. But let me be clear. I strongly disagree with any criticism of people based on who they vote for. You heard my speech last night and continuously throughout my career. I believe that the work that I do is about representing all the people, whether they support me or not. That was her response to a reporter when she was on the tarmac. She also repeated that what she has said on the trail, including that she will represent all Americans if elected. Yes, that's part of her speech. I mean, that's why her knee-jerk goes to that. And I don't know, the president inadvertently injected himself into the home stretch. First of all, that it was supposed to be his part of the run. That he was supposed to be out there campaigning. But having said that, I don't know. People, it's just like Bill Clinton has been saying some wild things. People are starting to wonder if it's not all just inadvertently said. And they still are trying to use it as an excuse to continue talking about the Madison Square Garden rally. But anyway, so they go through the whole history of CNN about how he tried to explain away his comments. And when CNN asked for an explanation on the president's comment, a White House spokesperson insisted that Biden had meant supporters. And you know all about that with the apostrophe and et cetera, et cetera. Harris's campaign was quick to try to publicly defend or explain those remarks publicly. What a weird sentence. But in private, both inside and around the campaign, plenty of Democrats were quietly buzzing with frustration and concern about the president's remarks. The Biden gaffe yesterday is just so infuriating, one former administration official said. Nobody wants him out there. Man, talk about insult to injury with President Biden. He can't catch a break. Biden's remarks have undeniably come an unwelcome distraction. Trump and his allies quickly seized on them to accuse Harris and her campaign, by extension, of looking down on Americans who backed the president. Well, haven't they been doing that from the beginning? But also, it's always Republicans seize. You never notice that? Now, one advisor said, we won't lose a single voter because of it. Okay. We're going to tell you what some other people had to say, but apparently, according to CNN, I think Axios, too, was Axios one of the places that I saw, that the Democrats are not very happy after the wave of backlash from Republicans. Some elected Democrats have admitted to Axios that Biden's comments were bad for Harris's campaign. Quote, someone needs to park Biden out of sight till after the election, one swing district House Democrat told the outlet. Yeah, now they're concerned that it doesn't just have implications for Kamala Harris, but implications on senators and congressmen in close races. So we're... let's take a couple comments here. Former Washington Post and current Semaphore reporter David Weigel expressed his disbelief at Biden making such a controversial comment in a low-pressure Zoom interview. Quote, can't get over Biden making this gaffe in a low-pressure Zoom call for Voto Latino. It's like bowling with bumpers, but somebody throwing a gutter ball that also sets the room on fire. Nate Silver, the person that they always look to for polling, also said that Biden is, quote, one of Kamala Harris's biggest impediments to victory after his garbage comments. While claiming that Harris has done a pretty good job with her campaign so far, he said that Biden doing everything possible, we'll say, to mess it up. We got to take a break. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us. Thank you again to Boss Security and Horseheads for bringing us the roof cam. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking, broadcasting live from the Hesselson's studio. Let's go to some viewer comments before we continue talking about garbage. Frank, so us Trump supporters are deplorables, racist, weird, Nazis, fascists, and now we are garbage? I guess we shouldn't take that insult at face value because we all know that the Democrats project what they are onto their opponents. Thank you, Ken. Another comment. This is a great question. Morning. Good morning. Was the media always historically biased? Were they always like a bunch of hyenas gathering around for the kill? Today's media has lost all my respect. They simply can't be trusted anymore. Not just your respect. If you look at the polls, they are less trusted than Congress, than the House and the Senate. And that's pretty low. And that's not knocking the House and the Senate. Just historically polling, that's very, very low. So, yes, Jeff Bezos wrote that piece the other day saying that's why they weren't endorsing a candidate, because there's this bias that people are seeing with their eyes. And not just Jeff Bezos, a lot in the media are recognizing that the bias has destroyed people's confidence and trust in the media. And it's been a long time coming. To your point, has historically been biased. Yes. But how do I word this? There was just no way to know, in a way. If you were watching the same newscast, when you got home, maybe the 11 o'clock news, 6 o'clock news, it's all you knew. You had, 3 channels? 4 channels offer. It wasn't the 24/7 news cycle, so let's even go before the 24/7 news cycle. There was a bias there, but you didn't have outlets at that point like talk radio. You didn't have then Fox News. And now various internet sites and various social media to get the actual information. So it was biased, and there's many books on this. There's bias. Even some of the people that we now look to historically as, I wish we had this anchor still, the good old days. If you look, even then there was a bias. It just wasn't like it is today. And now with the 24/7 news cycle, it's gotten even worse and more in your face, and with more opportunities to see the news, right? It's not just the 6 and 11 o'clock news. There's channels dedicated to it, obviously, clearly. There's more opportunities throughout the day to see the news. So, yes, it has historically been biased, but not like it is today. If you go back to, I think it was 2016, when the New York Times admitted that they did not have to be impartial, that they said it is so bad, it would be so bad with Trump that we are going to do everything we can in our power, no matter what that means, to get Hillary elected, that we no longer have to be fair. We no longer have to be impartial or unbiased. And it started before then. Because if you look at it, there's a book called Righteous Indignation by Andrew Breitbart. And I read it again not that long ago. And the book's older now. Andrew Breitbart's been passed away for quite some time. But it's interesting because it talks about the attacks at that time on George W. Bush, and you think, oh yeah, that's right. I mean, there has been historically, every Republican president is the worst, going to be a dictator, is going to basically, but with Trump, it was escalated. It was because they thought it was all a show. They thought he wasn't a serious candidate, and so Hillary was going to be the easy win. So they showed his rallies. They laughed at him on the screen, and then they realized, wait a minute, when it was too late, those speeches were actually resonating with the forgotten men and women of this country. So it's almost like that that hate comes from many places, but from the fact that they realized that they helped, in the media, helped get him to the White House, and it's like they can't live with themselves. But yes, it's always been biased. It's just now they don't hide it any longer. Now they're forthcoming with it. I mean, for instance, can I give you, I think, a really good example of this that I was going to save, but because you probably saw, and this is a little bit older news, but CNN making excuses for Biden, and actually, just to make it so that you wouldn't criticize him, saying that it was Biden's stutter that caused the garbage mistake. Is it a mistake, though? But as somebody who had a stutter growing up, it's very obvious to me that there was an apostrophe after supporters, said film executive Franklin Leonard. He was referring to the garbage spewed by supporters, not simply the supporters themselves. Okay, so that's a CNN, that's older news, but that's in a way to say, no, it's about a stutter, so you can't bring this up anymore. You look uncaring. You look actually like you're discriminating against people with stutters. That's not even the worst example. Listen to this. Nora O'Donnell, of all people, from CBS. She accuses Trump, quote, and his supporters of giving no grace to Biden over the comments. CBS complaining that Biden gets no grace. Out of curiosity, the 4 years that Trump was in office, the 4 years he wasn't, has CBS and specifically Nora O'Donnell ever given Trump any quote-unquote grace? So some of them are blatant with their bias, and some are so entrenched in bias that they don't even recognize how biased they're being. Because remember, they're in a bubble. Everybody around them, and we've heard reporter after reporter who has kind of been a whistleblower saying, I never worked with a Trump supporter, and I've been in the media 20 years, whatever the case may be. So they live in this bubble. All their friends hate Trump. And it's like, and you've heard it, and we've all kind of been guilty of it, where you say, I don't know, it's got to be easy, because everybody I know supported Trump in 2020. Everybody I talked to supported Trump. But that's a small number, you know? I mean, in the scheme of the size of America. So yes, it's anecdotal. That's why I always try to preface something by saying it's anecdotal if it's not a larger picture. That's what these people in Washington and New York City and in the media don't understand. It's anecdotal. Their friend group is liberal, because that's in journalism school. It's, Woodward and Bernstein are idols. They're to be worshipped because they brought down a sitting Republican president. So they are taught and indoctrinated to be far left. So everybody in that work group and their friends outside of that work group in liberal enclaves like New York City, Washington, LA, they're all liberal too. So they don't understand why everybody doesn't hate Trump. So anyway, I hope that wasn't too long of an answer for your question, because I thought it was a brilliant question. But yes, Nora O'Donnell said former President Donald Trump was in North Carolina earlier. And tonight he's also in Wisconsin. He landed in Green Bay just a short time ago and pulled then this campaign stunt, speaking to reporters from a garbage truck. Proof that he and his supporters are giving no grace to a gaffe by President Biden, where he and his explanation inadvertently called Trump supporters garbage. If the shoe was on the other foot, would any of those words been used to describe Trump's comments in that way? Biden given no grace to a gaffe. Now, why does she get to say it's a gaffe? Why does she get to define it that way? Or why does she get to say inadvertently? Has she talked to the president on this? Because his own staff at the White House didn't when they released a statement. Or at least they wouldn't admit one way or the other if they did, which normally tells you your answer. So in this case, Nora O'Donnell gets to assume things and present it as news. So, and using negative terms like the campaign stunt. The Trump had a campaign stunt. And that's how, when you hear desperation in someone's voice, like Norah O'Donnell, you know that was a bad mistake by Biden. You know that they realized the impact of what was said. Speaking to reporters from a garbage truck, proof that he and his supporters are giving no grace to a gaffe by President Biden, where he, in his explanation, inadvertently called Trump supporters garbage. Inadvertently. Isn't that interesting? Inadvertently, gaffe. Again, gaffe always worked with Biden. It worked for a long time. They could say, oh, that's just Uncle Joe and his gaffes. And so she's trying to kind of resurrect that argument. But we'll look forward to a time when we have an article that says Democrats give no grace to President Trump over his gaffe. Because when if you want to word it that way, if Trump makes a gaffe or inadvertently says something, they call it an outright lie and they harp on it for weeks. And that's why they're extra upset about this garbage comment, because it was it took away from their messaging, which was going to be all about that a comedian at the beginning of Madison Square Garden in a 6-hour rally. And again, that wasn't Trump saying that. Did they give him any grace? He didn't even say it. It was a comedian. And yet they've been focusing laser-like. But no, I don't think Norah O'Donnell gave Trump any grace for something that somebody else said. Let's take a short break because I'm running late. When we come back, Stacey Romeo is going to be our guest. Stacey Romeo is running for New York State Supreme Court in the 7th Judicial District. I understand that some of you saw this yesterday if you have antenna. I want to rebroadcast it because we had issues with cable providers yesterday, and it's only fair that she gets to reach the full audience. And so please watch it again. It was a great interview. She did a great job, not because of me. She did a great job. So if you don't mind watching it again, because after that, we'll wrap up this hour and we'll talk with former Congressman Joe Sempolinski. So stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. We're broadcasting from the Hesselson studio, and joining me in that studio this morning, Monroe County Family Court Judge and Acting State Supreme Court Judge Stacey Romeo. Thanks so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
We've got a lot to cover, but this is a judicial race, so it's not going to be too specific, but let's start with your background.
Well, currently I sit as the Monroe County Family Court Judge for the past 8 years. In that capacity, I'm also the supervising judge for all the family court judges in all 8 counties of the 7th Judicial District. I'm also a acting Supreme Court judge. I have been for the past 6 years. I've been in the legal community for close to 30 years now, and I've held a lot of hats in addition to what I've been doing the past 8 years. Yeah. I was a town attorney for the 2 towns in Monroe County. I had my own private practice. I was a law clerk in Supreme Court and in family court.
Wow.
And in that capacity, I have sat as a domestic violence hearing officer, a small claims hearing officer, a matrimonial referee, and a foreclosure referee.
Wow.
So I've done a lot.
You have done a lot.
I've done a lot.
So you're that busy. I know you're really active in the community, too. Where do you find the time to run and do? Why did you run? You've got enough going on.
Well, it's important. As you can see from my history, community service has been kind of paramount in my life leading up to what I do today. It's something that I teach my children. We have to give back to our community. Sure. It's not enough just to hold a job. Right. We have to make sure that we give back to what we get out of our community. So it's important for me to continue to do that for the next, hopefully, 14 years.
Yes, 14-year term.
Yes.
And I'm so glad you mentioned it like that, the community, because one of the goals of the show, when we brought it up from the beginning, was to kind of bring back that sense of community. And it seems to be lacking in recent years. And I don't know, people can blame COVID or whatever, but there's not that support like there used to be. So I'm so glad that you said that. Thanks for saying that. We're trying to promote community on this program. You mentioned 6 years as acting Supreme Court judge. Was there anything about those 6 years that surprised you?
I think not necessarily surprising, but as I sit hearing family court matters and criminal matters as the youth part judge, it's a nice change of pace to do some other types of legal work in my judicial capacity. So not necessarily surprising, I would say refreshing to do something different than what I had been doing every day.
And how did you prepare for that role going from family court to Supreme Court?
I think it was natural for me, given my background, that I did work in Supreme Court as a law clerk for many years and actually held my own dockets as those referees for many years. So actually it wasn't very difficult for me to do that at all.
Okay. Well, let's talk about the 7th Judicial District. So how many miles have you put on your car?
Too many, if you ask my husband.
Yeah, no kidding.
Good thing we bought our car and did not lease our car.
Okay, that's good.
We travel every day.
Wow.
Every day.
Well, you've got Cayuga, Livingston, Monroe, Ontario, Seneca, Steuben. If that's not enough, Wayne and Yates counties. That seems impossible.
It is. Nothing is impossible if you put your mind to it and you're dedicated. So we travel to all those counties after work and on the weekends. I mean, everyone kind of forgets that I have a day job.
Right. That's
kind of an important day job. But I would like to say more important than my day job, though, is my mom job and my wife job.
Absolutely.
And I put it in that order.
Yeah.
Most important are my children. My husband knows he takes second billing to the kids. But it's really important to me to make sure that my children know that I'm still their mom no matter what is going on in our worlds and wherever they are and whatever I'm doing. So that's the order that I like to keep everybody in.
Well, what do the kids think of you running?
They love it.
Oh, do they really?
They love it. Obviously they were all there for my first campaign, and they're a little bit older now. My daughter is almost 22.
Okay.
And she's in law school herself.
Oh, wow.
I have a son who's 18 and is away at college, and then I have an 11-year-old who's in 6th grade. And they're used to the campaign trail.
Yeah.
If they weren't helping me, they were helping other candidates.
Oh, okay.
And so they are very excited knowing that this is hopefully my last race. But they're really excited to know that their mom is running for Supreme Court and is making a difference in our community. They're very proud of me, and
that's great.
They've been great helpers.
Yeah. Wow, that's quite, because they don't sign up for it, right? You're the one that signs up
for
it, so it's great that they embrace it.
But I have to tell you, especially obviously the older children, they're both eligible to vote.
Right.
They have gotten their friends making sure that they are all registered and have their absentee ballots.
That's great.
Because they're both away at school. So I'm constantly getting little messages from their friends. I just voted for you. They send me,
nice?
The picture of them at the mailbox. I'm voting for you today.
Oh, that's fun.
So I think it's important not only that clearly that they're voting for me.
Right.
But it's important that they understand what their civic duty is and that they're spreading that to all of their friends.
Yes.
And knowing that it's important from the top race all the way down. People kind of forget how important it is for your local races, but especially your judicial races. We make a huge impact that people probably aren't aware of every day.
Yes.
And that it's important that every vote counts for every single race.
Do you find that it's difficult to get attention on your campaign because everybody's talking about the national level?
I think at the local level, people are really understanding that judicial races make a difference. I'm telling folks all the time that if you don't like what you're reading in the paper about policies that are made, and again, I can't comment on policies, but what I can say is if you don't like things that are happening, chances are someone's going to bring a lawsuit about it.
Right.
So it's important to make sure that you have the right judges in place to make those decisions that will impact the larger issues in our community and in our country.
And that's why, and you hit on that too, something we've made a kind of a cornerstone of this program is to try to interview as many guests as possible because it's getting tougher and tougher to find out about candidates. And you can go to websites, of course, which are very helpful. And yours actually electjudgeromeo.org. But the days of nonstop coverage of the local races they're gone, long gone.
Right. If you watch the news, it's all about the national race. And obviously, it's very important.
Yes.
This is a very important year.
Oh, yeah.
But again, every election is important. And I don't necessarily feel neglected, but I've taken it upon myself to educate voters as I go along the way. Been campaigning now probably about 250 days.
Wow.
So started in February, and we're under 2 weeks now, so we're pretty excited.
That is wild when you think about it. So we were talking about how large the 7th Judicial District is. Do you find it? How do you campaign when it's that big? Does that make sense? I mean, how do you? It's not knocking on doors; it would be impossible.
It is not a door-to-door race. Although it's great meeting voters. I think the better use of time for me has been finding community groups and finding folks in each county who will tell me what the important issues are that I can't really address issues, but where I can be, that folks might be congregating, events I can attend to meet greater populations of people, just to get my message out as to who I am and why I think I'm the best qualified candidate.
And when you're talking to voters, what are they saying to you specifically? What are their concerns?
I think people are concerned, basically, that not enough people are going to vote this year.
Oh, yeah, that is
and
true.
I would concur,
Yes.
right? I obviously, selfishly, I
Yes.
need everybody to go out and vote, and vote for Judge Romeo.
Yeah, that's right.
But I think that people are concerned that either you don't like who's out there to vote for, or it's a done deal one way or the other, or why does my vote really matter? So just trying to get the message out. It's important to vote. Please vote.
Yes.
Please vote.
Absolutely. It's very important. And like you said, the local is what really affects your day-to-day life. So would you explain the race a little bit, just so when people go to the ballot box or early vote, which starts on October 26th, what should they know?
There are 2 spots for Supreme Court, and there are 4 candidates running. So it's a race where you should cast 2 votes.
Okay.
Obviously, I think your number 1 vote should be for Judge Romeo.
That makes it easy.
Stacey Romeo will be on the ballot. I always say I should change my first name to Judge.
Yeah.
But it'll say Stacey Romeo on the ballot. But then you get the opportunity to vote for a second candidate as well. So make sure that you don't skip over that line.
Right, yeah.
And that you vote for 2 candidates.
And that's it gets confusing because some people don't know that you can vote for 2, and that's why I wanted to
Right.
hit that home, and we've been talking about it a lot on the program. Look for that little thing that says vote for 2 and then vote for 2, right?
Right.
So again, 6 years on the Supreme Court, what do you think some of the biggest issues you will face in the next 14 years if you're reelected?
I think, obviously, COVID really was a huge impact for many, many reasons. But if we look at the microcosm of the judicial system, it had a great impact on us. And we're still digging our way out of how cases were handled. We've really come a long way in our 7th Judicial District, where we don't have the backlog that you might hear about on the news.
Yeah.
That even nationally, but definitely downstate, there still is some backlog they're digging out of. But going forward, we have to figure out a way to embrace some of the things we learned from COVID.
Yes.
And how to integrate that in, but making sure that there's some civility back in the court system. We've been talking about that a little bit outside of this broadcast, where folks got comfortable doing everything virtually.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
some of the civility and some of
That's interesting,
the
yeah.
important, the grandeur of going into the courthouse
Yeah,
has been taken away.
that's true.
And the respect for judges in the judicial system, I've seen some denigration of that. So I'm hoping that we bring that back in to the forefront going forward.
That makes sense because it's so much easier behind a screen, right? To be rude in a way or not have the respect for the office if you're in your pajamas at your house, right? That's
Right.
interesting. I didn't really think of that.
Right.
And there is something about going into an amazing courtroom and that kind of awe feeling that you have, right?
And it's more than that. A lot of things happen in the courthouse.
yeah.
People like to try to work on how to settle their cases. How do we get things done? It's a lot more difficult to do that on the phone, behind a screen.
Yes.
It's that person-to-person contact that I think really makes an impact going forward when you're in the court system.
So is a lot still done virtually?
It depends on the court.
Okay.
In my court, I like everything in person.
Sure.
I do some things virtually because there are some benefits to having things virtual. But some pieces of the court system are still virtual more than in person. But I find a benefit of finding an integration of both.
What do you look forward to the most in the next 14 years if you are successful? Excuse me.
Well, I think at this point, since I've pretty much done everything there is to do in the court system, I'm looking forward to really not necessarily shedding all the hats, but honing my skills and making sure that I can make the most positive impact in the Supreme Court that I can. It'll be my last race. I can retire from this position.
Yeah.
So there's no worrying about what I'm going to do next because I've reached the pinnacle of my career, in my opinion. So I'm excited to make more of a positive impact than hopefully I already have made going forward.
And I talk about this with all the judicial candidates, depending on whatever level. Isn't it weird that you have 14 years where you can't talk politics, or in your case, 6 years where you can't talk politics? Probably your whole really life you can't talk politics, except for this really small window.
Right.
And you still can't talk about it, but you have to have an R or a D next to your name. Of course, you're Republican. That's got to be kind of weird, but it also gets you out of a lot of chicken dinners and during election season, right?
It is, it's interesting, and it is good because judges should not be talking about
I agree.
Not only what their personal feelings are on cases, but politics as well. Because when you have a case before me, you don't want to think, well, she's going to be biased because I heard her say this on, Big Fox TV one day, right? Because judges cannot and should not be biased. My personal feelings do not come into play. It's really a mere application of the law. And so I think it's important that we don't have politics in the political system when you're campaigning.
Do you think there'll ever be a time where they don't make you run as in a party?
No.
Yeah, I don't think so.
No, I don't think so.
And it's kind of a shame in so many ways.
Yeah, we talk about what would be a better way to do it.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Maybe it's rock, paper, scissors would be a great idea. I don't
things
know.
a lot easier.
Right? Other than that, I really don't have any good ideas.
It's a tough question. It's a $1 million question.
Right.
So I normally ask where people can find out more, but I've already said electjudgeromeo.org to find out all the information about your campaign. I know it's different. I can't even ask how people can help, right? Like how they can help your campaign?
I can't. I guess make sure that you come out there and vote.
Yes.
And I would say this is an important race. It's an important race for our community. Obviously, it's an important race for me and for my family.
Of course.
We have invested a lot of time into this, but it's my career, right? And this is the pinnacle of my career.
Yeah.
And Supreme Court is not a place for on-the-job training.
Right. And just before we go, in closing, what would you say to voters before they either early vote or before they go to the ballot on November 5th?
Well, again, if you want someone who can do the job without the on-the-job training and not take a chance, they should vote for Stacey Romeo, who has a proven track record of doing the right thing all day, every day in my courtroom, and that's what you're going to get for the next 14 years.
Well, thank you so much for doing this, coming all the way to the studio. I really appreciate that.
Well, thanks for having me.
Good luck. Best of luck.
Thank you so much.
All right, we'll be right back with Frankly Speaking. Stay with us. And we are back with Frankly Speaking, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here at Market Street in Corning. Thank you to Stacey Romeo for being our guest. I know we were going to broadcast that yesterday, played it today, right before our guest in the studio, former Congressman Joe Sempolinski. Hey, Joe.
So this is airing after Judge Romeo's?
Yeah, that's a pretty good
great.
lineup.
Everyone should vote for Judge Romeo.
I agree.
I like her a
Doesn't she does a really good job, and she came all the way from. She's out of the Rochester area. Yeah, came all the way down to the
family
studio.
court judge in Monroe County is her current occupation.
Yep, so did a very good job, and we had Ed White on earlier in
And
the
it's
week.
fantastic as well. That's a great ticket. So for what we're talking about, the 7th Judicial District is the Rochester area, Finger Lakes, and Steuben County in the southern tier. So there's 2 slots for the Supreme Court for that jurisdiction that are on the ballot on Tuesday, or if you want to vote today, it's early voting.
I'm voting today. Yeah. We're going to talk about that in a minute because a lot of people want to have
voting
questions
is important.
for you.
And early voting has been up this year, which is good. But Ed White and Stacey Romeo, it's a ticket. You can vote for 2. And then, of course, if you're in Steuben County, you've also got Mr. Tunney, you've got Mr. McCarthy, and if you're in the city of Corning, Mr. Ferratella. So if you're in the city of Corning, it's not incorrect. Please vote for 5 judges. And if you're outside of the city of Corning, in Steuben County, there's 4.
And they have a proposal about the mayoral race in Corning, too.
They do, to extend the term,
Yeah,
which is
so
interesting. That would be a change. 2 seems to be a little bit more responsive to the people, in my personal opinion.
Right. There you go. All right, a couple comments from the last hour. All you have to do is watch reruns of Johnny Carson to know there was bias against the Republican Party. Ronald Reagan was frequent target. We were talking about bias, as you can imagine, and we'll get to that in a second as well. Next up, the library early vote is wonderful. We experienced no wait time and had a great lunch on Market Street. Now, the next part of this from Fred is going to try to get me in trouble. So we're going to say any gender that might not want to announce their birthday in person, write it on a note ahead of time and then hand it to the person because they ask you to say loud. It's anybody.
That was a landmine you almost stepped on there?
I tweaked it, but I appreciate it, Fred. And everybody I've talked to, and people keep stopping on that street because we've been talking about early voting so much. It's great. And even Corning, the first day, some people complained because of putting money in the toll. money in the
park.
Yeah, to park, and that Corning listened and they changed it. Now I guess
good
there's
for the city.
Yeah, I
Okay,
guess there's signs
good for
up
them.
saying go
Okay,
park.
that's good.
And finally, good morning, Frank. Good morning. So this piece of trash is confused. Was it a stutter or an apostrophe? Okay, let's get there, Joe.
There's a lot to unpack there. We'll still go in order.
Yes.
Early voting. I've early voted, and I'm feeling that it has sort of become normal.
Yeah, it
right?
really has.
You know, where if you do something for 3 or 4 years, it becomes normal, and people have gotten sort of used to it. I would encourage it to all my Republican friends and everybody. You know, if you're doing the boost your own business. But to all my Republican friends, especially, to get out and vote early. We've seen in other races, most famously in the special election in the 3rd congressional district earlier this year in February, some weather event happens on election day, or it could be a personal event.
Yeah,
you could have something in your life. Your kid gets sick, or you get mandated at work, or whatever it is. You put all your eggs in that one basket on that day. In Steuben County, Hornell, Bath, and Corning are the 3 early vote sites. Anybody from any jurisdiction in Steuben County can vote at any of those sites. So if you're somebody that lives in Wayland but works in Corning, you can vote in Corning or anywhere else. So it's because they'll print the ballot when you get there. You tell them your name and your date of birth, and they'll figure out where you live and print the proper ballot for the jurisdiction in which you live, and you can cast that ballot, and then you're done. You can enjoy the rest of your time between now and Tuesday and just watch as an observer, or maybe go knock on some doors and tell some other people to vote for your preferred candidates.
Or take somebody,
to vote,
family,
right?
and say, hey, that day I'm gonna make sure that I go and pick up.
Well, it's great
whoever.
for candidates, because what I did literally yesterday is, I know where my TV ads are up, and there's, I'm on cable in certain areas, and there's gaps in the cable systems where, it's a different cable system that I'm not on or something. And so I went to a village in Cattaraugus County, which is between the 2 cable systems, and they get Erie County, which I'm not up on. So I get the list of Republican voters. Get the list of people who've already voted. And, number of people I got to get to just got a lot less. So now I can go to voters who are less likely voters and spend my time with them, because the most likely voters have already voted. So it's good for the candidates as well.
It almost seems, and I know there's a lot of people that are going to wait till election day, and I get it. I'm that person.
That's certainly their
that
prerogative.
always, that enjoyed it. Yeah. But now it almost seems, I don't know how to describe it, but it almost seems dangerous to just wait for that day, because you do think, man, how many times my car broke down?
Right.
Or my,
I drive
not feeling good.
not a great car.
Right.
So it's a concern.
But I know. But or I'm not feeling well, and I don't want to. And I'm not saying this is for everybody, but this year I'm kind of excited about early voting, so I can get that out of the way and focus on election day.
Numbers are up. And the numbers are up among Republicans in Steuben County, and then we have a group text of county chairmen of Central New York, Western New York, and what have you. We're sort of trading statistics over the last few days, and it seems like it is up throughout this region of New York.
That's great. Okay, so the next comment that we got. Let's talk about this.
We got to get to Biden still, right?
The Biden, right? Yeah, still. Like, we're not going to focus the whole time on him.
Boy.
So we were talking about media bias, and I just find this so interesting, Joe, because as someone that works in the media, bias infuriates me, but it's there. So CBS's Nora O'Donnell. I don't know if did you see this yesterday?
Yes, I did.
So
no grace.
Yes, no grace.
No grace.
And listen to the wording of this. So they're talking about Trump and his quote campaign stunt. So already you've got negative connotation. Speaking to reporters from a garbage truck, proof that he and his supporters are giving no grace to a gaffe. She's assuming it's a gaffe by President Biden, where he, in his explanation, inadvertently called Trump supporters garbage. So she jumped through a lot of hoops and made a lot of assumptions.
Yes.
And worded that in such a way that Nora O'Donnell, has she ever given grace to Donald J. Trump?
That's an excellent question. That's where I was going to go with it. Whereas when there is a anonymous allegation that Donald Trump at one point said something mean about somebody, it is reported by the mainstream media and the left media as gospel truth.
It's factual. Yeah.
When you have the President of the United States on tape
Yes.
saying certain things, then there's all this desire to try and find some way out of it, to put an apostrophe in some place where maybe it was, maybe it wasn't, whatever. And, well, first of all, if the president is so incoherent that you're going to make your argument based on that he's speaking gibberish or what have you. Should he be the president?
Right.
That's one question that we've already had to deal with over the course of the summer and the fall. But for a major mainstream news outlet, CBS News, for them to go on, they're obviously not the same as it was 50 years ago where everybody's watching one of the big three, but they're still one of the biggest news outlets in the world. To go say, oh, how dare the Republicans not show grace to the president? I mean, just it's insane. And I think it shows just how damaging what the president
That's
did
exactly what we were saying in the last hour, that if you come out with a statement like that, you realize they want – well, first of all, they wanted Madison Square Garden to be the talk of the town for the next week at that point. But so that took that away, and they realized the impact that they have to come up with a statement like that, and they're not even shy about saying
That's
that.
right. That's right.
But Caitlin Collins, at least she had to admit, you can't really spin it when it's on tape.
That's right. Because that to me is the answer.
Yeah.
Play the tape, play it in full context.
Yep.
You judge for yourself what the president was trying to say. And that's the answer, because we actually do have it on tape, unlike rumors and conjecture and these other things regarding
and his
President
White House
Trump.
aides saying what he meant. What was Axios? You saw that, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But Axios asked him, "Did you talk to the president about what that statement said?" And they would not comment.
Yeah. And what was funny was, so he was the context with the vice president, where she's giving her closing argument
About unity.
This huge. Yeah, about unity. Right, whatever. At least pretending that.
Yes,
Or whatever we'll say. She's saying that on the ellipse in front of the White House, and she's trying to have this great moment. Meanwhile, he's in a basement somewhere on sort of a softball Zoom call.
Yes.
And
It was a softball Zoom call.
I have no idea, because I sort of joke about the unity thing, but I honestly have no idea what Kamala Harris, I don't know, I get in trouble for saying it the wrong way. I honestly don't know what's the right way to say it. The vice president.
Yes.
I haven't seen, I don't know what she said.
Yeah.
I do not know. Because everything in the media is about what the president said or didn't say, or apostrophes or whatever, however people are spinning it. I do not know what the vice president of the United States said in her closing statement for the general election.
That's not good.
I mean, a good analogy if you're a lawyer is you're making your closing argument to the jury, your law partner gets up and punches the jury foreman in the face.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Maybe they're not listening anymore to what you were saying.
Yeah, that's a great point.
And now my concern is I got 5 days left. I got to just keep it in the lines, because there's a lot of saying silly stuff around.
Yeah, this
so
is
we're
not a
try
good time.
Not insult anybody for the rest of this
Yes,
interview.
exactly. Let me do the insulting.
Yeah,
I'll
right.
do it. I'll
That's
take it.
right.
I'm not running for anything, so I'm fine. But no, I mean, to me, it shows first and foremost really how the media was going to handle this for the last week, and really have been handling it from the beginning. Because when you see them come out and really be defenders in a way that you would think that some of these anchors and hosts are the Harris campaign spokesperson.
Right. What kind of grace did they give Trump when, I mean, he wasn't the one that made the insult to Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
It was somebody that was speaking before him at the rally. Why not have a little grace?
Yeah.
For him? I mean, to sort of that blatantly take the mask off, that, oh, no, you can't go after it for that. Listen, we're 5 days out from a presidential election. To think that's how it's going to be handled is a pretty silly
You've never
proposition.
paid attention to politics ever in your life at that point. If you, I would not expect.
And Nora O'Donnell's been a national political reporter for 20 years.
Yeah,
so
I think she knows what she's doing.
Right.
But and that's just one. And I go to that one, but that's just one example of this. CNN's panel saying it's because he had a stutter, and it again, to your point, it shows the damage that comment had.
Yeah, I mean, it was catastrophic for the Harris campaign.
I will ask though, how many? What do you think the comparison number-wise is to how many times they showed that comedian make that quote-unquote joke, and how many times they've actually showed the video?
Oh, as far as the mainstream media showing it?
Yeah.
Not as much.
No. I mean, because I turned it on. So I watched the rally on Sunday. Monday is when it started to gain some steam.
Right.
And the first news I watched, they showed the clip numerous times throughout the broadcast. Right. Now you're just hearing people report on what the White House says he meant, and it's not showing the clip.
Right. Which to me is the show the clip.
Yeah.
If
We're
you're going
fine
to
with
show
it.
Tony Hinchcliffe over and over again, show the President of the United States over and over again.
Yeah.
And you judge for yourself.
Yeah.
This is and that's what this country's supposed to be all about, that's what this election is supposed to be all about, is you judge for yourself what the president said, what he meant, how he actually feels about people that disagree with him. And let's bear in mind, we're talking about unity. We have the vice presidential nominee for the Democratic Party was referring to Madison Square Garden as a Nazi rally.
Right. Meaning,
and then
therefore,
they asked him, hey, does that undermine your running mate's message of so-called unity? He's like, nope.
Yeah,
So, this has gotten to a place where, the Democrats can throw any names they want. And you listen, if you like Donald Trump, you don't like Donald Trump. If you like the message of Madison Square Garden, you don't like the message of Madison Square Garden, that's up to you. That was not a Nazi rally. That's insane.
It's sickening.
It's disgusting. And frankly, insulting to the victims of Nazism.
Yeah. Yes.
So if that's how we're going to play it, where she can run around claiming unity is going to be a seat at the table for Trump supporters if she becomes president, and then her running mate calling people Nazis, her boss, saying God knows what, calling somebody got called garbage. I don't know if he knows. Yeah. It's really a shocking double standard, and the people should take that all into account as they're making their decision between now and Tuesday on how to vote.
We've got to take a break, but it was interesting. I was watching, because I think of things in the PR standpoint and politics-wise, and I was watching the news, I want to say it was yesterday, and they said there's going to be a big fundraiser for hurricane relief, and it said Dave Matthews Band is going to play at Madison Square Garden, and my first initial reaction was, oh, that's not good. I'm like, wait, when did Madison Square Garden become like a Nazi playground?
And just for the record, who hasn't been to Madison? I've been to basketball games at Madison Square Garden. Everybody's been to Madison Square Garden. It's not even the same building.
No.
There have been 4 Madison Square Gardens that all had the same name. The current Madison Square Garden isn't even the same building where that rally happened in the 30s.
Does it destroy Madison Square Garden's reputation?
It sounds there have been a lot of goofy people that have spoken at the Ellipse as far as, So you can't take the venue and then say, that you are... that was really grasping at straws. And again, grasping at straws in a profoundly offensive way. If you're somebody who is a member of a group that was afflicted by the terrible totalitarianism of the Nazi regime, whether that's Jewish people, whether that's people of other ethnic groups that are oppressed, whether you're disabled, throw those things around is pretty...
and so nonchalantly.
Yeah, pretty awful.
It is. It's disgusting. But we got to take a short break. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. And we are back. There's our beautiful view of Market Street with the Boss Security roof cam. You can't see it, Joe. Look at the roof cam. Whoa. Isn't that nice?
Oh, sun's coming up.
On Halloween morn. Isn't that nice?
They're excited.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. What are the kids going as?
Ladybug and a bumblebee.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So my kids are, my older daughter's 6, my younger daughter is 4, although she will turn 5 next week.
Oh, okay.
2 days after the election. And especially my younger daughter takes Halloween very seriously. She likes anything that has to do with fall. She's obsessed with leaves and pumpkins and candy and Halloween. So it should be a fun night tonight.
Yeah, that would be good.
I live in a very nice little, close knit neighborhood in the village of Canastillo. And so there's a lot of kids going around, and so my kids will hit some doors, and then they'll come to our porch and they'll hand out the candy to the other kids. And so I'm looking forward to it tonight. It's a fun night to be a dad on Halloween.
And I'm going to be down here on Market Street. Remember how much fun that was when you were in Congress?
Yeah,
I mean, thousands of kids. Flock to Market Street.
Any kids in the Corning area should come to Market Street. They do it from 4 to 6.
Yeah, 4 to 6.
And they have a lot of the businesses we'll be handing out, and it's a big crowd. Oh, it is
thousands.
It is a really fun atmosphere in Corning on Halloween night.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. So, okay, back to the issues of the day. First of all, a couple comments from viewers. Voting today. Thanks, Frank. You are awesome. Hey, listen to that.
Look at that.
Yeah, my husband will be glad when this is over. I think we all will. I get very upset about the stupidity of people that don't get Trump supporters. Thank you very much. Sounds like some of those people that don't get Trump supporters are Harris and Walz campaign. And let me the next one.
Yeah.
Good morning. Joe Sempolinski, always a pleasure. Smiley face.
That's fair. Those are all really nice positive.
Yeah, I don't read the bad ones. No, that's not true. Now someone's going to say I didn't
Someone's
read
going to say
no.
no. Because you've asked me some questions that are coming from the other side when I've been on the show, and that's certainly appropriate.
Yeah. So a little bit back, and I don't want to spend the whole show on the garbage comment, but I think it is worth talking about, right? Because we go back again to the Madison Square Garden rally, and that was going to be the focus. It wasn't going to be the last story, but it was always going to be. So that takes the steam
Certainly,
away.
the Democratic Party wanted that to be the story for as long as possible.
As long as possible. How long do you think this stays in the news cycle? Because I actually didn't think this morning it would be a part. I watched an early broadcast, obviously, just flipping around, and it was actually featured. But now it's more about the media or the White House's spin. It's really a weird.
Well, the
story
fact
right
that it's the president himself,
Right.
as opposed to some affiliate of the campaign, so that changed things a little bit. Where Kiltony isn't running for office,
right? Yeah, exactly.
So
you wouldn't think that after watching some of the coverage. My goodness, you would have thought he was the VP.
So that may extend a little bit. However, we were talking off the air, and the way I describe things to people is you get past Labor Day, I call it sort of silly season.
Sure,
It's starting to get a little silly. You get to the last 2 weeks, it's crazy season. And so the news cycle spins faster right now than it spins at any other time in the year, any other time in the 4-year cycle, really.
Yeah.
So I think there will be other twists and turns between now and the close of business on Tuesday. I don't know quite what they're going to be, but I think this one, because it was the President of the United States himself,
Right.
because it highlights the concerns that a lot of people who are independent and Republican voters have about how Democrats and liberals and coastal elites feel about them.
And govern.
And govern.
Yeah.
Because it also highlights sort of the incoherence of Biden, which is how long did Harris know about this or whatever. So it highlights a lot of things. So I think it may have a little bit longer life, but long life in this particular season is 2 days.
Yeah.
So we will see what happens. My prediction is there will be more twists and turns, but I have no idea what they're going to be.
As someone who's been involved in campaigns, obviously, for a long time, how brilliant was the garbage truck? As they call it, whatever she called stunt. Whatever you want to call it.
Very smart. And I think there was a lot of people online saying, hey, you should go work a garbage shift. And I think given what he had just done at McDonald's, which was hugely
successful.
Smart, I thought wearing the vest at the rally was very smart.
Yes, I do too.
Doing the, slapping a Trump logo on the side of a garbage truck and doing the press conference out the side of the window. That was good.
Cool. Yeah.
That was A-. Good job.
Yeah.
Then wearing the vest the entire rally.
Yeah.
A+.
Yes, exactly.
He may not take that off for the next 5 days.
No, it's going to be his lucky vest.
He may get sworn into office in January with that vest.
He should. Going back to that McDonald's point, because you raised an interesting thing. It's the same as what they've been saying about it's a stunt. They said, well, he did a McDonald's. It was just a stunt. Did anybody actually think he was going to be working in McDonald's for, he got his W-2 and it was going to...
Well, listen, it's rough out there. People need to get a second job, But no, I mean, it's the sort of thing, well, of course, he's the former president of the United States, so there's just security issues.
Yeah.
I mean, this guy's survived multiple assassination attempts.
Yeah, you can't have
so
someone come up to a window.
You're not just going to have him in the drive-thru being like, I'll take a number 3, extra cheese or whatever. So it's there has to be something around that. Now, how many? You don't think the governor of Minnesota, their Walls, trying to load his gun? That was was he just happened to be out hunting and there was a camera crew there? So. It's
this is what politics is.
Right.
I mean, that's what I guess I don't understand when they call things stunts. To me, it has a loaded connotation to it. But the McDonald's, I think what they didn't like about it is it shows Trump, off script, as personable, and that he's not this nasty person. I thought it was hilarious when he told the guy who's worked there for like 10 years at the fryer, and Trump's like, I still think I've seen more fries than you. It's just stuff like that where he can be self-deprecating, and it goes back to what you and I talked about with Vance. When you're told something all the time, and then you actually see it.
Right.
It's kind of jarring.
That's an important rule of politics where you have what is particularly devastating, and you put it in the context of the garbage situation.
Yeah.
When you sort of believe something, but it hasn't been confirmed, and then it's confirmed, it's devastating.
It really is.
So you sort of believe that the Democratic elites don't like you, and then you have the President of the United States saying that, it's devastating.
Yeah.
When you have a narrative that's false,
Yeah.
and then it's proven to be false, it breaks back the other way.
Yeah.
And I think what was smart from a campaign standpoint about the McDonald's thing is, this is, a billionaire.
Yeah.
This is a guy that's been famous for being this, rich guy, with
Yeah.
gold-plated everything for the last 50 years or
Yeah.
40 years. Everybody's been sort of presented the art of the deal.
Yeah,
Donald
of
Trump.
course.
And then you see him, sort of not with the camera off, but with sort of off script.
Yeah.
Right. And he's, he's handing out fries, joking around, or whatever. And those two moments leading into the election have the potential to be very
Game changer.
big moments.
Yeah.
Now, I don't want to overstate it because people make their votes on a lot of different
Yeah.
reasons, policy reasons. These are sort of vibes, sort of reasons
Right.
to use the vernacular of the moment.
Yeah.
But I would say that it's the sort of thing that helps define a person in the popular consciousness, which is important, especially at the presidential level.
And one more thing on this, just because then we're going to move on. But isn't it interesting? It's kind of like, hear me out on this, how I'm going to compare these two. The garbage comment is a lot like inflation and public safety, where they'll tell you, never mind what you're seeing, you're feeling, you're hearing. Same with the Madison Square Garden rally. Right. Never mind what you saw, just believe us. So no, he didn't really say garbage. No, the Madison Square Garden rally was actually really nasty, which I watched it. It wasn't. Trump did a great job. And without every one of these steps along the way, it's like, just trust us.
Yeah, I would say, again, if it's plausible, there should have been an apostrophe there, or he stuttered or something like that, then just present the video.
Yeah.
Just say, hey, listen, there's a lot of controversy over what the president said or didn't say. I'm saying if you're a news media outlet, here's the tape.
Yeah.
With full context. Cut it off or whatever. Just show
Yeah.
it. And let the people decide. And if you have to go through these sort of machinations,
Right.
like Norah O'Donnell was the worst of them, there's probably something there. And again, then judge for yourself. If that's something that affects your vote or doesn't affect your vote, then that's certainly your decision to make. I was speaking to a dinner last night, and I was talking about sort of this stage of the campaign. And people, we've done, at this point, I've paid for all the TV ads, and they'll run for another few days, and the mailers have gone out, and all these things, and it's sort of the nuts and bolts.
Right.
That's all happened already.
Yeah.
So I could go out and knock on some doors, and I can go out and make phone calls, or I could go out and do a rally or something. But the closer we get to the final election day, the more we're handing it over to the people.
Right.
And that's very appropriate because they're the final arbiter in our system, as they should be. And so at a certain point, you just hand it over to the people. They're going to make the decision anyway and say, listen, this is all the information. This is what we have. This is the tape. This is what they said. This is what somebody else said. This is the Madison Square Garden rally.
Right.
This is all of it, both sides. You make the decision.
Yeah. Simple as that. Yeah. We got to take a break. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking after this. The Boss Security Roof Camp. Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. It's brightening up out there.
I love it.
Yeah, here on Market Street.
Beautiful day in Corn.
That's right. We are back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. We have Joe Sempolinski in the studio. Joe, we've got a lot to cover outside of the presidential. I know that's why everybody wants to focus, but there's some really big issues. First, let me go through a couple comments from viewers. Does anyone think that garbage comment might have been a damaging comment to the Harris campaign in retaliation of Biden being kicked out, sending more voters to Trump? I'm just reading your comment. No comment.
I would say I don't think the president is consciously trying to hurt the vice president. His subconscious, I can't.
Yeah, can't speak for. This is another comment, or a question, actually. Question for Joe. Appreciate that you want to represent us, but with things the way they are, why would you want to put yourself through that? That's a good question.
That's a really profound question, actually. I mean, that's a real philosophical question. So,
glutton for punishment. The simple answer.
Right. No, somebody's going to have these roles.
Yeah.
Right? So somebody is going to speak for the 148th Assembly District in Albany. And if you have, by your ability or by your experience or by the life situation you're in, you have the opportunity to be that voice and fulfill that role, and or believe or hope that you could do a good job, I think you have a duty to step up. Because if you don't do it, somebody else is gonna.
Right.
And it may be somebody that doesn't share the values of this particular district, or somebody that wouldn't be as effective or what have you. And we're in a weird situation where, to be frank, we've got an extra congressman lying around.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
pull them out of retirement in a way.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, and a lot of times when you're a former congressman, you're 80 years old and you've done your service or whatever. And I'm 41. Yeah. And so to be able to take that experience, not only in office, but also as a staff person, as you recall, I've been chief of staff for the current assemblyman. I have been district director for my predecessor in Congress, Mr. Reed. So to have that level of experience, I think it's important, and I think I feel duty bound to try and use that experience for the public good. And as I said during my interlude in Congress and coming to the end of it, to me, it doesn't matter whether it's federal or state, and it doesn't matter whether you're a staff person or an elected official. I want to serve and help the people of the Southern Tier and the people of New York, and work with my successor, Mr. Langworthy, who represents the entire assembly district I'm running for, and Mr. O'Mara and Mr. Borrello, who are the two senators. And I think that team together can do a really good job for the folks. So somebody's got to do it. Right. And I feel if I walked away from it, I would be doing something wrong.
Yeah. You know what's funny, Joe, and I'm sure people have told you this, being that you're on this show, this market, some of your district would reach this market, right?
Sure. Yeah.
But I've had two reactions when people early vote, and they talk about you. They go, "Why couldn't I vote for Joe?" And I explain.
Well, if you're voting for Palmisano or Friend, they're great too, or
that's
Andrea Bailey.
That's the other one. I had someone say, "How could he run against Phil Palmisano?" I said,
for the record, I would never.
No, who in the right mind would?
Phil Palmisano.
But I just thought it was funny. I had one reaction that way. I'm like, no. Let's clear. Sometimes you got to clarify, and it's not. It gets confusing.
Well, it's because assembly districts are smaller than congressional districts.
Yeah.
So in the Elmira media market, there are 4 different assembly districts that touch the Elmira media market. Phil, Chris, and Andrea are the other 3 assembly.
So it gets a little confusing.
And they are all wonderful people. So if you're in Mr. Friend's district, Mr. Palmisano's district, or in currently the Marjorie Burns district, Andrea Bailey is the Republican nominee there because Marge is retiring. I heartily endorse all 3 of those people, and I would never want to run against Phil, especially.
No,
who doesn't like Phil?
That would not be the best idea. But I did think that reaction was funny. Here's another question from a viewer. Question for Joe: is it possible to vote out Senator Gillibrand?
Well, Mike
Sapercone's a good
Mike
candidate.
Sapercone has sat right where I'm sitting. Mm-hmm. Mike Sapercone has been working.
Yeah.
And it is more difficult running statewide for Senate in a presidential year than it is in a gubernatorial year. Because if you're in a gubernatorial year, you've got governor, lieutenant governor, controller, attorney general, and potentially Senate. So you got a team. Yeah. Mike's out there on his lonesome as far as the only statewide that's just the state. And he has been working. He has earned my respect. He would be a fantastic senator.
That debate was good. It drives me crazy. This happened with Gillibrand last time. I didn't know about the debate until the next day. Yeah. Do you ever notice that? Now, it's nice in today's world that you just go on YouTube. You
can watch it, right.
But in the old days, you missed it. Cuomo was like notorious at this kind of stuff. Oh, yeah, we're going to have every single candidate that's running. You'd have like the spider monkey party. Remember that one?
And the rent was too darn high.
Yeah, famous. But so all of a sudden he's talking 30 seconds and the thing's over. Yeah. But watching it after the fact, great job.
Mike, I would urge everybody to vote for Mr. Sapercone for the United States Senate.
He also has nice campaign pens.
Oh, his pens are fantastic. Yeah. So his campaign paraphernalia that he gives out pens, and they are some of the best pens. I've been writing with like almost nothing but Sapercone pens all summer. They're fantastic.
He should probably give them to other people than us.
Right, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Now, we had mentioned Phil Palmisano. We had Phil on just the other day, and I wanted to ask him about Proposition 1. Yeah. And we also have Bobby Ann Cox on Monday's program just to do a little bit of promotion here, and she is obviously against Prop 1. So we want to ask you, I had some people reach out and say, what's Joe's thoughts on the push for Prop 1?
Yeah, I'm a no on Prop 1, and I would urge everybody else to vote no on Prop 1. This is a very broadly written constitutional amendment, And when you write things that broadly, especially with the courts as liberal as they are in New York State, it just opens up a can of worms. I've heard it referred to as sort of a Trojan horse.
Yes.
And the left wants to present it as some sort of abortion proposition. The word abortion's not in there.
No.
There's some, references vaguely to pregnancy, what have you. So it's clear they want to take very vague language and have it mean what they want it to mean just based on that issue. Mm-hmm. But there's a bunch of other things in there that have nothing even remotely to do with abortion. So why are those in there?
Mm-hmm. I also don't like the way it was done, where this is what you're actually voting on, but on the ballot we're only going to cut it down to be. Are you against discrimination?
And there
of course I'm against
and there was a real fight that could have been actually a lot worse. The left wanted to make it even more biased on the language, so we were able to push back a little bit on that. The one that's been getting the most attention, I think correctly so, is the protections regarding gender identity,
right, and
how that would impact, especially combined with the protections regarding age, because it doesn't say you can't discriminate against the elderly. It doesn't say, oh, you can't, fire somebody because they're above a certain age. It just says age.
Yeah.
So that would certainly mean not only people who are higher in age, but also mean people that are lower in age. Mm-hmm. So you combine that with other things, especially gender identity. How does that affect children? As far as biological males competing in women's sports, biological males being in female-specific areas such as locker rooms and bathrooms. That suddenly becomes a constitutional right. How does it affect, if you combine it with age, medical transitioning, where suddenly it's somebody, you can't discriminate against age or gender identity. If a 10-year-old says they want to transition, that's now become a constitutional right if Proposition 1 passes. So it is something that would not effectively change the law on abortion that was being presented that way from the left, and then would do all these other things that have nothing to do with that particular issue. So the left is being very disingenuous about this. Mm-hmm. Again, when you're on voting, read the proposition itself. There's sort of this very biased conclusion on the ballot, but the proposition language itself is there, and see, well, why are all these other things there that the left is somehow claiming will have no impact? Every letter, every character, every space, every apostrophe.
Yeah, I was just going to say.
Everything that is in the state or federal constitution gets picked apart over the course of time by lawsuits that come after the fact. And so to put something in there so broadly written opens up an enormous, as I said, can of worms. And once you get something into the state constitution, it's very hard to get it out. So this is something that you can't undo easily.
No. We got to take a short break. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on Big Fox. We are back with Frankly Speaking, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio with our Boss Security roof cam. And we've got Joe Sempolinski in that studio. Joe, thanks for being on the show.
Always a pleasure. This is the fun stuff.
This is a fun time of year, too.
This is it.
So a quick comment from a viewer, and then I got another question for you. With a large population of veterans in the community and Veterans Day on the horizon, how could anyone vote for someone guilty of stolen valor and plausible desertion? Well, fair point.
Not a fan of the governor of Minnesota.
That's what I'm reading, if I can read between the lines. All right, Joe. Governor Hochul predicts the Democrats will flip at least 3 House seats. What are you thinking? I know Hochul is really invested in this because she did so bad last time, and she wants that speaking spot at DNC again.
Well, Nancy Pelosi has explicitly blamed Kathy Hochul for the fact that the Democrats don't control the House of Representatives for running a poor gubernatorial campaign. I don't believe I'm saying this, but Nancy Pelosi is right on this one particular thing. Just before anybody clips that out of context.
Right.
On this one particular thing, Kathy Hochul ran a bad gubernatorial campaign. Lee Zeldin ran a fantastic gubernatorial campaign. And the House of Representatives, the majority was determined in New York State. So because of that, there's a lot of seats that are competitive. You have a lot of freshman Republicans. And also, the special master that drew the map had a lot of criteria in the state constitution he could work with. And he chose to very much emphasize competitive districts.
Right.
So we've got districts in central New York, Hudson Valley, Long Island that will determine, I think, the majority in the House of Representatives. So, on Long Island, you've got the 1st District and the 4th District, Mr. Lolota and Mr. D'Esposito. The First district looks a little safer just because it's a little bit more Republican district, but
Anything
the Esposito seems to be working hard. In the Hudson Valley, all indications are the Michael Aller seems to be moving in the right direction. Some prognosticators have taken it from a toss-up to a lean Republican, and a public poll came out that had Mike up 5 points. So that is one that's a real tough D versus R, and that seems to be going the Republicans' way. You go further up the Hudson Valley, there's in the 18th district, the Republicans are playing offense. So Allison Esposito, who is Mr. Zeldin's running mate, she was our nominee for lieutenant governor. She is the nominee for Congress there. That's the district she grew up in. And so that's one district where we could get one. You know, so there was sort of one that was sort of left on the table that we didn't get last time, even though we did very well. Mark Molinaro has that race. Apparently, I was hearing numbers last night as to the amount that's being spent in that race, in the tens of millions for a House race, which is an absurd amount of money. That district runs from Ithaca and Binghamton all the way over to the Massachusetts border. So it's sort of this eastern southern tier, central New York capital. It sort of wraps around Albany a little bit. So that is being presented to the public, I think, correctly as probably the most competitive House seat. And then the Syracuse seat is also getting a ton of money dumped into it. That's Brandon Williams. So these folks, if you're happen to know folks in Syracuse or Binghamton or the lower Hudson Valley or Long Island, please urge them to get out to vote for the House member, the Republican nominee for the House or the incumbent House member, because, and the reason all this money is flowing in, the reason the Speaker of the House has been hanging out in the Hudson Valley for the last week
I know.
is because that is the area, I think correctly, is going to determine the House, the governor. She says she's confident, but her track record on guessing things is
not,
and her track record on being the governor is not that great.
To tie that in, we had a great question, and this has been coming up for a while, and we haven't had a chance because there's so much to talk about, but we had a viewer write in a couple times. What is there any way, or what would the process be to get term limits on the governor?
On the governor?
Yeah, on the governor.
Oh, okay, that's a good question. So that would be a state constitutional amendment. So Proposition 1, which I discussed, vote no. Vote no. Is a proposed state constitutional amendment. So it would be a similar situation where it would have to pass through the legislature, Assembly and Senate. There would have to be an intervening election. Then it would have to pass the Assembly and Senate again. And the reason being that the intervening election allows the public to hold you voted for that thing I didn't like, I can vote for the other person, right? And then it would be a referendum on the ballot after it has passed the legislature twice. And then the people would be able to say up or down, do they approve of a 2-term or a 3-term, whatever term limit happens to be. Most states have a 2-term limit on governor. New York does not. You can run in perpetuity. Or, if you're a former governor who doesn't like the job that your former lieutenant governor is doing and is a complete nut.
What are you trying to say, Joe?
Maybe he comes back.
That's right.
I hope not.
We got to take a short break, and then we're going to focus on local, so stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking. We are back with Frankly Speaking, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. You see our beautiful Boss security camera hanging up there. Let's get to the interview now. I'm trying to find the button here, Joe. There we go. There you are. You see the light on now. We got a lot to talk about local. How's everything going on the ground? I mean, we talk about the national. Everybody does this. We talk about the national. And then it's, wait a minute, the most important, as you were alluding to earlier, is really the local that affects your day-to-day life.
Yeah, early vote is up in Steuben County. Republican early vote is up in Steuben County. Republican absentee vote is up in Steuben County.
And that's not typical, absentee not being an avenue.
No, I mean, so in 2022 special election, I won Steuben County by a gargantuan margin. Right. Thank you very much. I lost the absentees.
Yeah.
Even in Steuben.
Yeah.
Which is a Republican-leaning jurisdiction. Republicans are currently up there. So it's looking locally very strong. But again, I encourage everybody to vote locally on the ballot in Steuben County. The top race locally is Judge McCarthy running for county and family court. Supremely qualified. And I cannot endorse his candidacy enough. He is already an excellent judge. He's the city judge in Corning. He's an acting county court judge. And having him on the bench for the next 10 years would be very much in the interest of the people of the county. So that's the big local Steuben County race there. We have other, obviously, regional contested races. There's 2 of the 3 assembly races are contested. Again, I am not running against Philip Palmisano.
No, keep that in mind.
I would not. We're not doing that. Mr. Palmisano is unopposed. No one has chosen to run against Mr. Palmisano. It shows how popular he is.
Right now, he's saying, stop.
That's right. Yeah. He's unlike most politicians, not somebody who toots his own horn.
Right.
He's a great assemblyman. Mr. O'Mara, who represents all of the Elmira media market, he's unopposed, which is great. Tom is a fantastic state senator. But as I said earlier in the program, there are 4 assembly districts that touch the Elmira media market. 2 of those 4 are contested. Mr. Friend, Chris Friend's unopposed too. He's a great guy. He's got most of Chemung County. But Northern Steuben and Western Steuben do have contested assembly races. I'm running in the Western Steuben one, the 148th district. So if you're sort of south of Hornell in Steuben County, Cansteo, Greenwood, Jasper, Troopsburg, Hartsville, Rexville, I would love to have your vote. And if you're in the Wayland, Cohocton general area, Andrea Bailey is the Livingston County clerk, and she's running to replace Marge Burns and is an excellent candidate. I've been very impressed by her work ethic. She will be an excellent assemblywoman. So those are also contested. Yeah. Mr. Langworthy has an opponent, my successor in Congress. He's been doing sort of a series of barnstorming around the district. He's going to be in Hornell. Well, he's going to be in Chemung County, like lunchtime Saturday. He's going to be in Hornell, 2 o'clock-ish. So he'll be in Allegheny County. He's going to Chautauqua County. So he's
good day.
He's going all over the place on Saturday and doing a series of campaign get out the vote rallies. So I'll be with him in Hornell and Wellsville and supporting his campaign. He's doing a great job, and I can certainly, I have a perspective on that particular office.
Yes.
That's a little unique, and I'm looking forward to working with Nick. As state and federal work together, I think we're going to have a great working relationship. But he does have a Democratic opponent, and so we need to get out and support our congressman.
Yeah, so and then of course we talked about Supreme Court, and we've talked about the court. And I don't want to go full circle, but it has been interesting because as someone that is interviewing them, they're a tough interview because they've got to be so.
Yeah. Like if you ask me, what do you think about some hot button issue? I can tell you, I think this, and I can just say what I think. If you're running for judge, and this is important, and it's legitimate, where you don't want to present bias,
right?
You don't want to prejudge some particular issue. And so they can sort of make biographical statements.
Yeah, that's all it is. Tell me your background, your experience.
You can't say I'm pro-Second Amendment. You can say I own a gun.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You can't say I support family values. You can say I've been married to my wife for 40 years.
Right.
So you can sort of present it in that way. But they are certainly more constrained than somebody running for an executive or a legislative position. But I get the judicial ticket that we have this year, I'm very proud of.
A lot of experience.
Ed White, Stacey Romeo are very experienced. And then obviously we've got Chris Tunney and Matt McCarthy and Chris Ferratella. So it's and these are important because these are races that everything I just mentioned is either 10 or 14.
Yeah.
Supreme Court's a 14-year term. So if you get somebody that is not a good person or not qualified in these type of positions, it's a real problem. And I would emphasize the qualifications.
Yep.
We've got the most qualified people running on the Republican line, and I urge people to vote the Republican line for all the judicial positions.
And before we go, Joe, and I want to mention, because you mentioned Matt McCarthy, he is going to be on the program again tomorrow. And then since we were talking about Prop 1, Bobby Ann Cox is going to be on the show to kind of wrap up the election interviews. I think that's a good.
Those are both excellent interviews. Like I said, Matt's great, and kudos to Attorney Cox.
Yeah.
She has been working on this
issue.
Think
she's
and a variety
campaigning.
Of other. Yeah.
I mean, that's how much she's been out.
On the Prop 1 issue, on medical freedom issues regarding, the quarantine camps that the governor wanted to slip into regulation, which was insane. Her and Senator Borrello, as sort of her legislative partner, have been working very hard on this.
Yes, and we were glad to have them both in on the program before, but she was kind enough to join us for one last interview because, people, rightfully so, are confused. about Prop 1. I know that we talked about
It's a confusing proposition. I think it's designed to be a confusing.
I did too, and I can't remember who I was talking to. I think maybe even her. It's very telling to me, and we talked about it off the air, that the signs just say vote yes. They don't tell you why. But if you see the signs that say vote no,
there's a reason.
There's a reason.
Whatever that particular reason might be, there's a reason.
Yeah. So I think just to kind of wrap up on that, but you say your campaign's going good.
I'm very honored and pleased and humbled by the level of support from fundraising, from the people that did the petitions back in March and April and February.
Seems like a lifetime ago,
Yeah,
doesn't
it
it?
does. Yeah, there's a long gap now between petitions and election day, longer than it used to be.
Yeah.
But also the response to the ads that we've done, the television ads and the mailers that we've done. People especially seem to like that I've highlighted my family.
Yeah.
And I have my wife and my 2 daughters and pretty much almost all of the campaign material that we're producing, and I think that's important because it sort of shows who I am. Mm-hmm. It shows the life I'm living, and if you see the TV ad, we're walking down the street. That's the actual street that I live on. Mm-hmm. That's 3rd Street in Canasteo, and if I can sort of relay to the people who I actually am as a human being, I think that makes them more comfortable voting for me. And I also want to just publicly on the air thank my wife
for putting up with you for this,
putting up with all of it. Well, me generally.
But when Congress is over, she's got to be like, finally.
Yeah, I mean, this is a woman. 3 times I've sat her down in the last 3 years and said, "Hey, honey, I'm quitting my job to run for a congressional district that may not exist, or to be a congressman for 4 months, or to be in the state assembly." And she's just rolled with it, and she's a wonderful wife and mother, and my best friend, my soulmate. And so someday I hope she watches. I'll make sure she pulls this up and watches this.
I know. I was going to say,
but this doesn't happen.
She is.
This doesn't happen without the support of my wife Angie, without the support of my parents, my mother-in-law, the support of my daughters. So.
And Joe, just before we go, I'd ask this of all candidates, and you've got the candidate hat on right now. What would you say to voters before they head to the booth or early vote?
1, please vote. Regardless of your political affiliation, regardless of who you're voting for, please vote. It is a right that is very hard won. We had a veteran comment earlier. Yeah. There's been a lot of blood spilt and a lot of sacrifice for you to have the right to vote. So please, please, please take advantage of it, regardless of your political affiliation. Regarding my candidacy, I think I'm uniquely qualified to do this job, historically, bizarrely, unusually uniquely qualified, and it would be an honor to continue to represent and serve the people of the Southern Tier who I've dedicated my entire career to making their lives a little bit better, and I think I can be a person who will be a strong voice in Albany for the values of this region.
Well, Joe, thanks so much for being on the show. We're out of time. No protesters today. We did good.
Oh, that's good. We're moving in the right direction.
Tune in tomorrow morning at 6 for Frankly Speaking, only on Big Fox.